So where do you use reflection? So we are using a reflection in .NET IntelliSense. So whenever we uh, write a dot after any object, it lists down all the methods and properties. So that is one of the daily routine example of the reflection. So what is difference between dynamic and where keyword? So where keyword is binding is done at the compile time, while dynamic keyword is binding is done at the runtime. And for object also binding is done at the runtime. So for where and dynamic, casting is not needed, but for object casting is needed. So I have created one example where I have declared I as where. If you can see, uh, you can see here, but it's still showing a data type of I as a int because it binding is done at the compile time. But if you can see for dynamic keyword, you, it's still showing dynamic, and for object also it's still showing as a object because they are binding is done at the runtime. If we run this, so if you see here, so object of B type is object and O is also type object. So if you see here, the type of I is int. Now you can see here for D variable, the type is string, and it is assigned when it has ran. Now if again I ran D is equal to 2000, now its data type is changed to int. So the benefit of dynamic over where is that we can change data type at the runtime. For object, if you see, I have assigned 100, but still its data type is int, and we can access that by using casting. So what are generics? So what interviewer expect from this question that candidate should have knowledge why this generics keyword is introduced in the .NET, although we have objects. So basically generics is acts as a placeholder for the data types, and mainly it is used for type safety, code reusability. Interestingly, internally it uses linked list. For example, you can see here I have created one class object collection where we are trying to create a collection of any data type like int, double or string by using objects, and we have created one method add by using which we are adding objects to a collection. Now I have added int to the collection. I can easily create the collection. I have done the adding collection. Now I have created new string collection. I can add the string, but the issue with this is what I can add integer into a string collection without any issue. So it creates the type safety issues. Okay, so in order to overcome, .NET has introduced generics. So where we can check type safety. So now I have created one collection of int. Okay, now if I try to add string to this int collection, see it's giving error. So now if you go and see this generic collection class, I have defined it as a generic. So I can add any data type to the collection, and that will be a type safety which is checked at the compile time. So this way it is faster, it doesn't need any typecasting. So what is difference between IComparable and an IComparer? So mainly these are used for sorting purposes. So what happens ki by using normal list, suppose it is int or string, can be sorted by using sort method of that list. But when it comes to a complex object like we have custom objects created, they cannot be sorted by using just sort method of list. So let's see the example. So I have this list of int where I have added a few integers. So that I can sort by using sort method, and we can display. But when it comes to a customer class which is object, okay, so which has customer ID classification, if I try to sort that, then it will give an issue. So let's run and check. So if I try to sort, so it is giving exception, it cannot be sorted because it is complex type and you don't know how to sort. So in order to overcome this, .NET has provided uh, two interfaces. That is, one is comparer and another is IComparer. IComparable and another one is IComparer. So basically by using this we can sort the customer now which has given the issue. If we look at the comparable, if you look at the comparable customer class, where we have inherited IComparable, which has compare to method, which takes one argument as a other comparable customer. It compares the revenue of that customer with the current customer, and depending on that it returns 0 or 1 to sort that collection. So but what is the issue with this? We cannot have multiple sorts, like we have one sort uh, which sorts customer on the basis of ascending revenue or on the basis of descending. So we cannot have multiple sorts in one class where it inherits IComparable. So in order to overcome this issue, .NET has provided uh, comparable IComparer interface. So where what we can implement IComparer in any class, and we can have uh, sorting on basis of like revenue ascending order or revenue descending order, or we can have sorting basis of multiple properties and various types. So let's run this and see. So here if you can see, it is ordered, means list is ordered uh, by using revenue, by using IComparer interface, and here list is ordered ascending and descending on the basis of revenue by using IComparer interface. IEnumerable versus IQuerable. So from this interview question, interviewer expect that candidate should know the performance implications for different techniques. So for large database, if we use wrong technique, then it has severe performance implications on the applications. So if you see, when we use IEnumerable, when it queries to a database, it query full to the database, and that data is taken into the memory of the application. Then application applies filter on it, and data is used by the client. So this technique has severe implications when data is large. So comparatively, if we use IQuerable, what it does, IQuerable do a query to a database, but with the filter, and it took only data what is needed, and then client uses it. So definitely it has performance boost. So let's see an example. So I have created one example which uses entity framework, and I am using one branch table to query on database. If I run this, so if you see this, I am using IEnumerable for branch table. In IEnumerable, when it generates a query, if you see here, if you see the query, so it doesn't apply any filter here over here, but if you see in query we have already applied is active filter. Similarly, if we do it for IQuerable, you can see here in IQuerable filter is applied. So this is the basic difference between IQuerable and IEnum. So other than that, there are few differences like IEnumerable does not support lazy loading, and again I said, so depending on the situations, suppose when you are querying data from in-memory collections like list and array, you can use IEnumerable. But when you want to query data outside the memory from the database for large data collections, you can use IQuerable. And also mainly use of IQuerable is paging. because for large data it is not possible to show at one time, so that needs to fetch uh, by using paging. But for small collections you can use in-memory traverses, that is IEnumerable. What are delegates and types of delegates? So delegates are actually a reference function types. So it holds reference to a function and we can invoke them. So that can be invoked asynchronously, and definitely it can be used for decoupling, because suppose there is any change inside the function, it won't affect anything for delegate to invoke that method. Also, it is used for invoking methods at the runtime. So let's see the example. So what interviewer actually expect from this question is basically it expects you should know the syntax of the delegate and how we can invoke that delegate. So syntax is very simple. It uses delegate keyword, and after delegate keyword it is a signature of the function which you want to invoke. Suppose number square, you can see number square is has return type double, and one parameter as a double. So same, it has square num delegate has same syntax as that of number square. Now with that square num, you can have a variable of delegate called square method, and by using that call square object of a delegate, you can invoke a method which will calculate the square of the method, that is 2. So if we run, so it should return a 4. So square of number 2 is 4. Also interviewer expect you knows the types of delegates. So there are basically three types of delegates: single delegates, multicast delegate, and generic delegates. The single delegate is what we saw now. Now we can see the multicast delegates and generic delegates. So the multicast delegate is basically we can add multiple references to a single delegate. Suppose here we are adding number square method reference to our delegate called square, and here we are adding delegate of calculating square root to a reference to a delegate called square. So if we invoke, okay, it will calculate. If we invoke this method, it will calculate the square of 4, and when we invoke this method, so this is meaning of multicast, that we can able to add multiple reference to a single delegate. And now we can see generic delegates. So basically there are three types of generic delegates: fun, action, and fun, action, and predicate. So the syntax and declaration will be same as that of single. So you need to have first mention keyword delegate, and afterwards it will be a signature of the method that you want to hold a reference into the delegate. So we have created one delegate object of calculate simple interest, and which holds reference to a get total interest, which basically calculates the interest on the principal amount for a year. Now, then why we require these generic delegates? Now, these generic delegates func, what it do? It take one input, okay, interest, and return one output. So whenever we call this, it returns interest of the method. What is action? In action delegate, it is same, but it doesn't return any value. And what about predicate? Predicate also the same, but it returns only boolean value. So if we run, then predicate returns whether the input provided, date, is true or false. So if I run this, see first, so it returns total interest on 1000 or 100,000, that is 1 lakh in a year, is at the rate of 8.0 is 8,000. And action delegate is returning quick refresh, and predicate is also showing that it is invalid date, because it is invalid date. So thanks watching this interview question series. You can contact me for any questions on quickrefresh 2019 at the rate of gmail.com. This is gmail.com. Next interview series that I am preparing is oops interview questions. Your feedback is always welcome. Please do like to keep motivating me, comment and subscribe. Thanks watching for quick refresh interview question and answer series.